everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the new Netflix film, Day Shift. Day Shift is a vampire movie directed by J.J. Perry, and this movie is his debut as a director, so congratulations. People were describing this movie as John Wick with vampires, so I had to check it out. The synopsis is as follows. A hard-working dad out to provide for his daughter uses a boring pool cleaning job as a front for his real gig. Hunting and killing vampires. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. This movie centers around the fact that his wife and his daughter are planning on moving away unless he can come up with the money to pay for his daughter's braces and her school. But then Bud ends up killing the wrong vampire, and all of a sudden a pretty powerful vampire starts coming after him. This plot just progressed in some really weak ways, and the ending of the film was absolutely garbage, and it just ended up coming across really sloppy. In addition to that, I think a lot of the universe building in this story was also not done very well. There are some important details that need to be established about this world and what the laws are and what the rules are and what it looks like, and some of those things you find scattered throughout the film and others you never find out. So while a simple plot is not a bad thing, the way that this film did it was really poor. So plot gets a thumbs down. 2 is family friendliness. Needless to say, this movie's not family friendly. It's full of blood and gore, profanity. I think there's a sexual comment here or there. A lot of the stuff you see on screen is very in detail and disgusting. A lot of people get their heads cut off or other limbs cut off. It's just an absolute bloodbath. Family friendliness gets a thumbs down. 3 is acting and script. The acting in this movie was decent overall, but there were some really bad performances that drug it down. Jamie Foxx plays Jamie Foxx. Snoop Dogg plays Snoop Dogg. Like the same way that Dwayne Johnson plays Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds plays Ryan Reynolds. They can show versatility, but they didn't do it in this movie. Dave Franco's character was really funny at times, and I thought his acting was good. And while I like Carla Souza's performance, something about her voice got under my skin super fast. There's only been one other time that I've ever watched a movie, that movie being Annihilation, where I literally had to turn the movie off because this woman's voice was just hitting all the wrong nerves. But I was able to get past it in this movie. But the performances that drug this movie down were from Eric Lange and Megan Good. I felt like this movie had a really hard time finding the line between a serious movie and an action comedy, and Lange's character is a perfect example of that. I felt he was way too cartoonish for the rest of the mood of this movie, and it stood out really bad. In addition to that, Megan Good's performance was just terrible. Even though they gave her a pretty bad script, she was by far the worst actress in this movie. And that brings me to the script. I really wanted to like the script of this movie, but the script of this movie reflected the non-committal behavior towards whether it was going to be more of an action comedy, more of a cartoonish, ridiculous comedy. The script was completely divided. Sometimes you'd get moments that were actually genuinely funny, but then right after that genuinely funny moment, it'd be undercut by potty humor or a joke that was clearly forced that took that moment right away. In addition to that, there were a bunch of cheesy lines, and this movie takes the time to exposition dump on you, telling you the 5 different kinds of vampires, and then you're never able to discern between them for the rest of the movie. So it comes across super pointless, and it makes me beg the question, if you're going to choose to exposition dump, then why not use it to build the universe and to have us understand why certain things are the way they are, or how long vampires have been around, or what that whole relationship looks like, because that's not in this movie. This movie's script was its own worst enemy, and that is just a tragedy. Acting and script get a thumbs down. 4 is character development. This movie starts with some okay character development, and then it just goes downhill really fast. The character dynamic that did work in this movie was between Bud Jablonski and Seth, played by Dave Franco. Their relationship was probably the most developed, and it was funny. It played out well on screen, and I wish that we would have gotten more genuinely funny moments between them. But that was probably the best part about this movie. And unfortunately, I felt like this movie did neglect some of the more interesting characters in this universe. One of those characters was Heather, played by Natasha Bordizzo. Her character is super interesting, but they kind of just horseshoed her into the movie and didn't explain much, gave her the depth of a kiddie pool, and just shooed the movie along its way. It's unfortunate that her character was introduced in the downward spiral of this movie, because if they would have focused on her more, I think this movie would have been a lot better. Audrey, the villain of this movie, is okay. They definitely should have developed her character a bit more, and I think they could have done that by focusing on Heather, but alas, they didn't. Oh, and Bud Jablonski's relationship with his wife and daughter, a total joke. There's no depth there whatsoever, and the way that things end with them at the end of the movie is one of the most unbelievable character progressions I've ever seen in cinema. So unfortunately, character development for me gets a thumbs down. 5 is visuals and CGI. I gotta admit, some of the visuals in this movie are pretty cool. I like the fight scenes in John Wick, and some of the fight scenes in this movie were semblant of that. Unfortunately, we only got to see one scene with Bud fighting a vampire, which takes place in the trailer, that really focuses on a lot of those fighting dynamics. Pretty much after that, for the rest of the movie, a lot of it is just mindless blowing away of all the vampires, to the point where it really felt like a zombie movie, where they're just killing all of these vampires in droves just like you would a zombie, and there's no specific ways to deal with the specific types of vampires that they exposition dumped on us, and we only get to see one really technical fight with a vampire near the beginning of the movie. And while most of the CG in this movie is serviceable, some of it is pretty bad. So overall, visuals and CGI get a 50-50. And 6 is rewatchability. I really wanted to like this movie more than I did. This movie was set up pretty well for success, and there were quite a few things that I enjoyed about the movie. But there comes a point where this movie very rapidly descends into B-rated movie territory. Because when this movie goes off the edge, it goes off the edge fast. So I guess I have to give rewatchability a 50-50. Overall, I have to give Day Shift a 5.5 out of 10. This movie had some really interesting ideas behind it. It had some cool fight scenes, a funny dynamic with Jamie Foxx and Dave Franco, but it neglected to focus on its most interesting characters or develop the characters whatsoever. There were some absolutely terrible acting performances, along with a script that sabotaged itself, and the movie really had a hard time trying to find the balance between action and comedy. So props to J.J. Perry for this being his first movie, and I really hope he can take what worked in this film, learn from it, and make a much better movie in the future. Because with all these things considered, Day Shift just ends up falling amongst all of the hundreds of vampire/zombie movies that get lost in the wasteland of streaming services. And at the end of the day, this movie comes pretty close to not being worth watching. But if you do decide to watch it, it's available on Netflix. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Day Shift, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.